Thank you.
You're welcome. Ms. Mitchell.
Good afternoon. Sharon Mitchell, Interim Director, Registration and Elections. Commissioner, I'd like to present an update on our election that was held on yesterday. I'd like to first start off by saying that I'm proud of the hard...
Go ahead.
Get out of here.
I would like to say first that I am proud of the hard work of the staff of Registration and Elections and the thousands of poll workers whom we rely upon to carry out such a major function of government. I'm also grateful to our full county government and all the employees. In fact, we had employees from Fulton County departments that worked with us until about 4:30 this morning counting absentee ballots. So certainly we are so appreciative of all the county employees who work in various capacities for us throughout this election. I'd like to further thank the Board of County Commissioners for all of your support and resources. We could not have done what we did in terms of pulling off this election without your support. And our unofficial results currently reflect that we had 388,740 voters, or a percentage of about 68.54% turnout as it relates to yesterday's election. In addition to the number of persons that were voting on election day, we also had 152,000 voters who participated in our early voting process between the weeks of October 15th through November 2nd. In addition, we counted some 16,196 absentee ballots. We're completing that process as we speak. Staff is completing about 1,000 ballots counting as we speak. Our primary concern for this election was to ensure that every eligible voter had the opportunity to cast their ballots and have it counted. Now, while there was an inordinate amount of attention on a few unfortunate situations, we believe that we were able to keep our promise to the majority of the voters as relates to conducting a good election. In fact, of the discussions as relates to provisional ballots, we have calculated that we have about 11,000 provisional ballots that were cast as a result of poll workers unsure about when to expedite that process. However, our preliminary review reflects that a significant amount of those ballots were appropriately cast in terms of not being eligible to vote in the election in terms of eligibility. We are making that determination. We are meeting with the Secretary of State's office this afternoon. We were trying to get a meeting earlier today to go through the process of determining which of those ballots are eligible and which of those ballots are not. And then, of course, we like to say that an event that was as complicated as an election that we had and as labor intensive, as you're aware, I attempted to take this role about 6 weeks ago. And we certainly had some moments that we deem as somewhat chaotic, but we acknowledge that some aspects didn't go as well as we would have liked. However, we will say to you that we will be working with staff with the county manager's office and doing all the lessons learned to assess where those failures occurred.
Well, Ms. Mitchell, wanted to thank you for stepping in the role. All right, you didn't ask for this position. You were just working, and the director was terminated, and we needed somebody to step in, so you stepped in. So I want to thank you for stepping in and rallying the troops. We know that there were some challenges yesterday, but I want to thank you. I just want you to know that I appreciate you 6 weeks ago meeting with us, meeting with me, and saying you would do it. And so I want to thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Now, of course, there were some challenges. Can you just delineate a little bit more specifically what those challenges were and how going forward we can make sure that those challenges are going to be avoidable?
Okay. We'll start with our beginning of the day. We would like to certainly say that we opened all the polls on time. That was a big accomplishment for us. However, there were about 3 precincts that did not open as relates to the doors opening because there were some electricity issues. We had 2 precincts that had no power. However, the savviness of our managers, one manager decided to allow their voters to cast provisional ballots on the sidewalk so that they could actually start voting at 7 a.m. Another one decided to use the backup power in the polls on election day. Third precinct had some access areas as relates to gaining access to the facility. The most that we saw in terms of challenges on yesterday were the training challenges of our poll managers. as related to having the ability to review what is referred to as a supplemental list of voters and then creating an access card to allow those individuals to vote on the electronic machines. There are misunderstanding and confusion on that process is what led to the distribution of provisional ballots. Upon learning that there was that degree of confusion, we took efforts to actually provide them with online direct telephone call instructions. We saw subsequent to doing so that we saw a change in terms of their understanding. Our analysis that we're conducting currently shows that a number of poll managers did indeed understand that process, but certainly the ones that did not, those appear to be the ones that were highlighted in terms of what was being stated and reported on yesterday. Secondly, there were some concerns as relates to delivering the provisional ballots to the respective polling places in a timely manner. Our typical approach is to create provisional ballots in any election and have those on hand. And in this particular case for presidential, there were about 50 provisional ballots on hand at every precinct throughout our organization. We had 346 precincts. Each of them had 50, which is typically the norm that we use to beat that process up. Upon the managers distributing so many of them so quickly, they ran out of those far greater numbers than we anticipated. And there were some delays with our ability to process those and to deliver them. We were aided in that process with the county manager's office of adding additional trucks and vehicles to dispatch them to the various locations throughout the county. Upon that process, we were able to have a better timeliness in terms of delivering the provisional ballots to the respective locations. The third issue that you may have we had some challenges with were as related to the proportion of what we refer to as express polls in the polling places. We had voters who said, I would come in, it's a long line, there's one express poll, but there is an actual formula that is created that determines what that number is, and our formula is basically one express poll to 1,100 voters per location. So that was the issue as related to express polls. Our issue as relates to equipment, we did not get reports of major equipment failure. We had what we refer to as some confusion from poll managers in terms of how to manage that equipment and making the timely contacts with our help desk who could provide them with the necessary assistance. So that is the full scope of what we feel were the challenges. We did have some communication challenges as well with the poll managers getting through our lines. We had, as you're aware, as part of our work plan, increased our customer call center with county employees. We had some 50 call center operators to take calls, and we had a separate poll worker call center. We found that even with that stepped up approach in terms of adding to the call centers, there were some challenges with the poll workers getting through to get information to us and getting the appropriate instructions. We believe that by noon or so on yesterday, we were able to work many of those challenges out as well. So we say to you that many of the challenges as they arose, and we know that in any election you have some challenges, some portions of your plan that don't connect as you expect them. We were making every attempt to be as proactive and responsive to those challenges as we could.
Commissioner Edwards.
Ms. Mitchell, let me say this. In light of the turmoil you came in, I was impressed. I was impressed. I was first impressed when I came down and saw you at the polls. When I went down to South Fulton Government Center, you were actually there, you know, helping people out and showing people what to do, and stayed for several hours. So I knew then that you had a commitment. 346 precincts is a lot of precincts. It was never my expectation that you were going to be perfect. Never. But it could have been a lot worse had you not done some of the things that you've done. I can tell you, I got thank you for giving me my number, so I can call the precinct, and I had to use it. But you know what? When I used it, people came to the aid, and I want to commend that young lady who came out to A. Philip Randolph, the technician. She came out not just to fix a machine, but once she fixed that machine, she got behind that machine and she went to work. So I want to thank you for that. Also, I want to thank you for April and Bridget, who were on the phone, working things out and getting things handled. So it could have been a lot worse. Could have been a whole lot worse. But at the end of the day, Barack's still president. And we want to make sure, you know, no matter how many times you count, it's going to come out the same way. I just want to make sure that you know from me, that I thought you did a job. You all of you all, not just, I mean the whole staff, I thought you all did a job. I thought you got some unfair criticism. I know for someone not to have a key, I mean, you know, out of 346 precincts, don't highlight that one precinct, but somebody didn't have the key. There were a lot of people who left those polls who had good things to say. I heard them when they were coming out. There was no expectation on any constituent who went in to vote that it was going to be perfect either. They knew that little things would come up. But we got through it, thanks to you and your staff. And I really appreciate the yeoman's job that all of y'all did in trying to keep up with the little, and let me say this to you. Some of these things were so small it ain't worth talking about. I mean, it really wasn't. I mean, some of these things were just, okay, I don't have a key to the door. That ain't national news. Yeah, it's bad, but it ain't national news. If you look at what was happening, Commissioner, all over the country, they was talking about, I think we did pretty good. Considering other states, where people were in line 7 or 8 hours, I thought we did pretty doggone good. So once again, thank you and your staff.
Thank you,
Commissioner Darnell, Commissioner Housing, and Commissioner Garner.
Yes, I wanted to ask a question. I don't know whether or not you have access to the information. Are they still counting absentee ballots in Florida?
I do not know, Commissioner.
They were at 3 o'clock this morning. Well done, Ms. Mitchell. Well done. I could have predicted it. Intelligence and integrity and honesty is the way I define leadership. That's what people need. That's what people want. People want leadership. Just as big a difference as night and day. What kind of leader you have. And I think that's what Commissioner Edwards was talking about earlier. It's a matter of character. You have all the degrees in the world, but character, that's what inspires people. You're going to do an evaluation report that's going to go into these matters later. One of the things I was a little concerned about, I believe, is reflected in some of the things you mentioned today. It's hard to train 2,000 people in 6 weeks. We've been doing this for years, all over this state. How are you going to train 2,000 people in 6 weeks? I don't care how much online you have in Texas, whatever that is. But anyway, I think that's something we got to look at. But Ms. Mitchell, I did some checking on my own to see what are the error rates for elections departments as large as this one. You're well below the average. One of the things that we deal with in Fulton County is a biased local press. Many of our departments that operate in direct-to-service delivery, they run into this all the time. Our lawyers go to Superior Court, they get one kind of experience from some judges, and then lawyers from another county can come with the same case, same evidence. They get another kind of response from some judges. So all Fulton County departments have that, you have that burden on you. It was almost amusing, I say almost amusing, how one local newspaper tried to fill up 5 columns every day about Fulton County's process. It was hard to do. They had to go back to the prior director and bring it all the way down. All he had was anecdotal. If I was going to write a story about an election department's performance, with 346 precincts, I tried to establish a pattern. I wouldn't go over to Clark and try to get a student coming out of the gym. But that's their problem. That's why their circulation is down, and they are getting broke. We are not in that situation. We listen to what our constituents say. And I want you to know the constituents in my district, in our problem precincts, had nothing but high praise. They knew if they waited until Tuesday, the lines were going to be long. One other thing, and I'm going to stop. I know you all wondered in Fulton County Elections Department, why didn't somebody say something about your early voting process? Every metro county, including Cobb, where we're getting experts from, had long lines. They didn't plan for it. We got those daily reports, and incidentally, your communications with the media and with this board were excellent. I don't call names. You got too many employees to call names. We got too many employees working on the county staff to call names. But I want to say thank you to them as well. But I think that it's very important that we say to the public, because that's who's looking at this program, that what you read in some local newspapers is entirely different from what constituents tell us. I've been here since 1992, and I have never had the experience of a general election where I received as fewer calls as I did this year. People knew they were going to have to stand in line on Tuesday. And during the early voting, people were just ecstatic. A lady called me after she had been. She wanted to check to make sure where Adamsville was. And she said, I just had to call you back and tell you it was fantastic. I got out of there in 15 minutes. So we're very, very pleased, but I just want to use this opportunity, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, to say we must deal with the fact that when we send employees out here to deliver these services, we have local media that do not do fair reporting. And we must stand with them and not against them. When you read 6 and 7 columns of nothing but anecdotes instead of a careful analysis. We want careful analysis. We just heard from a consultant who went through our purchasing department with a fine-tooth comb. We want that kind of analysis. He didn't come up in here trying to twist things to make Fulton County look bad, because we're never going to look bad. Excellence is our guide. So I think that got to check and see have they finished counting down there in Florida. But it's over. Somebody tell them it's over. But I remember when it was a mess down there. I remember some of the people who were down there when it was a mess also. Character at the top, in my opinion, is what saved the day. Character with your supervisors, people reporting to you. Last but not least, character on the ground. There were people working hard in those precincts because you had set the standard. And I think it'd be an example for all of our departments who work with people to see what elections was able to do, even though they were put into a situation, as the chairman said, that could not have been more undesirable. You can do it. We'll say that to the young people. Don't worry about the haters and the detractors. They always lose. Just be determined and be patient and do what's right. And that's why this board, many of us, are very pleased with your performance. I'll be waiting on your evaluation, though, point by point, based on the work plan that you developed and your recommendations for the next election.
Commissioner Hausman, Commissioner Garner.
Ms. Mitchell, first of all, I too appreciate the fact that you came into the game late and a lot of the planning was done by someone else, and so you had to just do the best you could with a bad situation. But I do feel like there were a lot of issues up in North Fulton that maybe other areas didn't experience. When I called you with those issues, you were very responsive, and I appreciate that. But you know there were issues. Okay, there were a lot of issues. And I feel like when we get your report that you will include all these issues, but I feel like I owe it to the public and to the Board of Commissioners to tell you that it wasn't smooth in every area. While you were responsive, the planning was not adequate in a lot of areas in North Fulton County. The issue of how many machines for early voting, I don't think that was equitable. I know in the OC location there was 4. How many were there in the South Fulton location?
There were 10.
You know, I don't understand why that was not equal in every location. I had people on Friday standing in line for over 4 hours because they could not check in. It wasn't a question of not having enough voting machines. So, you know, I feel like the planning needs to be reevaluated. That formula needs to be reevaluated. I don't know what formula you use for early voting. I know you have no way to know what the turnout's going to be, but you certainly know the population and you know the geographic area that you're trying to serve. And I don't think we had either enough locations in North Fulton or enough machines in North Fulton. And I got a lot of complaints about it. I got a lot of people that tell me they just kept on going. They went over there multiple times and finally decided that they would stay and try and vote, and then it took them hours. So I don't think that's the service that we want to deliver to our community. I know it's not the service that I want to deliver, and I hope it's not the one that you want to deliver either. As far as the issue on the election day, there were several large precincts in North Fulton that also did not have adequate check-in machines, and lots of people waiting in line. When it was brought to your attention, you did try to rectify it. I do appreciate that, but it shouldn't have happened in the first place. We spent a lot of money on this election, and I feel like that, you know, again, while it may not have been your fault, the planning needs to be thoroughly reviewed for future elections to make sure we don't have this kind of thing again. And then I must say that it's very disappointing to listen to the media, whether they're biased or not, and hear the Secretary of State saying that he could not get response from our elections department. I don't know if that's accurate, but it's what I heard on the radio over and over and over. I know they called me yesterday. I don't get calls from the Secretary of State very often. So I gave them the number I'd been provided to help them try and get through to you. So I hope that you have a good explanation when you meet with Mr. Kemp on what happened there, and I'm assuming you've spoken to him already. But I would just hope that he would get priority when he calls. And I would like to ask that you make sure that that happens. The issue of training, you know, it was mentioned that you can't train 2,000 people in 6 weeks. Surely we started training before 6 weeks ago. Please tell me we did.
Yes.
We did. So we weren't trying to train that many people in that short of a time period. So I guess I'm a little concerned that we had so many that didn't understand the provisional balloting process. We obviously need to tighten that up. So, you know, I'm sure that I'll be hearing of other things. I checked my email a minute ago. I see Senator Fort has made a request for us to send some folks out to a certain area on Thursday and Friday to help count some provisional ballots. I don't know what that's about, but that tells me that there are issues in other parts of the county other than the area that I serve. And I know you're going to be responsive for that like you were when I called you, and I do thank you for that. I know that this sounds very negative, but I feel like it's my job to share with you the experience of North Fulton County and the frustration that my community felt and shared with me. So I sincerely hope it's not about the results. Okay, we can't do anything about the results. I don't have any issue with the results. I'm sure that's accurate. But when people have problems voting and when they feel like they can't wait and they try multiple times to achieve their right to vote, I feel that's a problem. Thank you.
Commissioner Garner.
Hi, Ms. Mitchell. You've heard from my colleagues, and I too want to join in the chorus of thanking you and your staff for the job that you have done. I know that there were problems. We encountered a few. We had people call our office, and I have to say, communication and follow-up is very important. And your staff communicated with us and followed up and got back to us. And at the end of the day, I also had citizens call our office to say things were handled in a timely manner and a job well done. So thank you for that. I also want to say that I appreciated the proactive measure that you took prior to the election to come out to the Mills Center in District 6 and have a session with our residents and to prepare them about the process, the voting process, and all of the steps necessary and involved in voting. So I thought that was a great way to start this process by educating the public beforehand about what to expect. So again, I know that we have a number of issues that we have to address, and I'm sure that we'll get that in your report. But I just want to say that for me, communication and follow-up is very important. Those are issues and concerns that I had previously, and they were addressed this time. So again, thank you to you and your team for that job.
Just one last thing before Commissioner Edwards. When do you plan to certify the results?
We are expected to certify on Saturday at noon.
Okay. That's not the stop deadline, is it?
We have until the Monday.
Okay, but you're going to get it done on Saturday.
We have it scheduled for Saturday, yes,
Okay,
sir.
good, okay. Commissioner Edwards.
During the early advanced voting, what was your number one precinct?
The South District.
So that's why we got 10 machines, right?
The size of the location determined how many capacity.
People leave, they don't get counted.
38,000. No, I don't want to hear that. You know, you call in South Fulton's name.
Okay, hold on.
And it doesn't make any sense. You put the machines in where you got the people voting. That makes sense. Anybody with a third grade education know that. 38,000 people. I can't help what they had at OC. She put the machines where the people were doing the voting. Thank you.
Ms. Mitchell, would you say there was adequate space at OC for the volume of people that were voting there?
There were 5 machines based upon the size of the location.
Was the location adequate for the number of people that were trying to vote there?
We believe that there should have been a larger location at the OC location.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Mitchell and team for coming forward. All right, next item, please.
Well done.
Thank you.
Mr.